Today, the title of this presentation is Project Management Professional Information Briefing. And please note that PMP is a registered trademark of the Project Management Institute. PMP, the number of people who have written the PMP exam at the moment is well over 1 million people. And so the number of people who are joining this fellowship, this international fellowship, is increasing literally daily. My name is Philip. I have a bachelor's from UNISA. I launched Classic Seminars in '98. I left for the US in 2002. I've been involved in financial services and IT projects in the US. I led projects at the largest mortgage house in the world, Fannie Mae, prior to the Great Recession. In fact, the thing that caused the recession, they had me on a project trying to help with resolving that issue. Clearly, we did not plug the hole because the Great Recession did happen. It was too little, too late. Right back in South Africa in late 2011, we joined Classic Seminars as a partner in 2012, and I'm one of the few over 40s who love tree climbing. I enjoy doing that in my spare time. Here's a photo of my family. You'll see that I have a gray beard, and that is my wife in the middle in the pink, and then my son on the left, and my 3 daughters. So what are the PMP and kappam certifications? Well, the PMP is for to demonstrate that you're an experienced project manager, and it requires both a showing of the fact that you have experience, and that experience is somewhere between 3 years effectively and 5 years, depending on your the background and your qualifications. So if you have a bachelor's degree, then you would only need 3 years of continuous experience, and you'll then also need project management training background, which the class that Classic Seminars offers does provide, as well as filling out your online application form. The exam itself is only 180 questions. It takes 230 minutes. That's what they give you. And as I said, the PMP is to show that you're an experienced project manager. On the other hand, the kappam, or the Certified Associate in Project Management, is for junior project managers or for project administrators or members of the team. It is the only, from a background point of view, you do not need to show project management experience. You only need to show that you have a school leavers certificate. It's a 150 question paper, and it's only 3 hours. So what is the PMBOK guide? You may have heard the term PMBOK guide thrown around from time to time, and you may be wondering what it is. And it is important to know what this is because in terms of the Project Management Institute, this is one of the core texts or documents that they use for their different certifications. So the PMBOK guide stands for each letter of the word. PMBOK stands for a word. P stands for project, M for management, B for body, O for of, and K for knowledge. So if we were to take all project managers that have ever lived and all, from all projects that have ever been done, right back into the building of the pyramids, put them all in a field at the same time, and then get an artificial intelligence computer with like a little cap that clips onto everyone's head. And we clip this little device onto everybody's head in this field. And we suck up all the knowledge from every project manager of what they understand, how to lead projects. And we put that into a large artificial intelligence kind of computer. Then that would be the project management body of knowledge. So when you look at this and you see the word PMBOK guide, what does that mean? Well, it's a guide to the project management body of knowledge. So that book that has been produced by the Project Management Institute is a guide to the project management body of knowledge. It's not the project management body of knowledge. The project management body of knowledge is what is in every project manager globally in their head and in their hands, what they've done. So it's more than a guide, though. It's a comprehensive set of knowledge and good practice. And interestingly, in the most recent release, which is release 7, which actually is on the shelves, it is available to purchase, and I do have a copy of it. And I actually have contributed to the production of that document. It is a very elegant and document, and it is revolutionary, really, because it's a complete change, a 90-degree change from the way that the previous versions were put together. But we'll dive into that a little bit later about the differences between this version and the previous ones. So historically, the PMBOK has been the basis for the PMP and the kappam exams, and it still does have a basis for the current kappam exam. It's updated every 4 years, and the last edition, edition 6, was released in September 2017. They said that edition 7 would be released in April 2021, but they were a couple months late. It only got released in July. Who administers the PMP or the kappam exams? They're administered by the Project Management Institute, USA. As I've already mentioned, there's more than 1 million PMP certification holders worldwide. The actual exam is taken at Pearson centers in cities around the world. So any major city that is near where you are. So for example, in Durban, in Cape Town, and in Johannesburg, there are Pearson centers or equivalent where these exams are taken currently. You can also take the exam in the comfort of your own home. And this is a recent development, almost synchronous with lockdown. So you can write the exam on a computer in your own home. What are the benefits of the PMP certification? Well, it demonstrates that you have what it takes to run the toughest of projects, that you have both education and experience. In terms of the organization, what it shows is that you have credentialed project management experience, and that's very, very useful for on your resume and for bids and tenders. In terms of the benefits to you as an individual, what the PMP will do is it's an investment into your future. It gives you, if you will, an international job passport. Okay. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is once you're a PMP, you're part of an international fellowship of PMPs. And this group of people is professional, they're friendly, they're helpful, and they're all project managers who are connected in the industry and are aware of jobs around them. So it's very likely and very common, actually, for people who have a PMP designation to have access to opportunities in other countries. In fact, one of the guys that I trained not too long ago, by the name of Eric Decker, when he got his PMP, he moved to United Arab Emirates and did some work there. And then a little bit later, he was doing some work in London on the underground, the tube. They were developing a new station, and he was the program manager on that job. So when I went over to the UK to do some other work with another one of my friends in Coventry, who was busy with some low-cost housing projects, I stopped off at Eric and he took me up top and we looked down on site. So just to show that, having your PMP does actually open doors for you and allow you to do jobs elsewhere, which is helpful from time to time. It also will increase, this percentage here is 23% salary increase. This is for sub-Saharan Africa. So it's below the Sahara. That was the study that was done. And also there's an increase of demand for PMPs in power corporations and logistic companies. So what is the PMP examination content outline? The examination content outline is a document that is put out by the Project Management Institute, and it is the basis for the PMP exam. People would, I've discussed this with people in the past, and they are under the false impression or assumption that in order to pass the PMP, they need to read the PMBOK guide. Well, when in actual fact, in order to pass the PMP, you need to have a thorough understanding of the examination content outline. It's updated regularly, approximately once every 4 years. and it is updated on the basis of a study that is done. The most recent version was released in June 2019, and it is still the basis for the new 2021 exam. You want to know how it was produced? The survey, or Global Practice Analysis Market Research Survey or study, was pushed out, and this is pushed out every 4 years, and it has highlighted a couple of areas which were previously unaddressed in the PMP exam. So that caused the change, and we're probably a year and a half away from the next examination content outline coming out. What are the changes in the present version of the exam? So if you compare how the exam used to operate in 2019 from how it operates now, or what the dimensions of the exam are, in the present rendition of the exam, so from the 2nd of January 2021, we have 50% new material. And what that 50% new material is it's questions that are probing the area of Agile and hybrid type projects. One of the other changes that has come in is that the exam used to be 200 questions and it used to be 4 hours long. Now they've reduced the number of questions by 20 and reduced the number of minutes by 10. We also, if you write in the comfort of your own home, there are 2 compulsory 10-minute breaks in the middle of the exam. When I say in the middle, a third of the way through and 2/3 of the way through. There's also new types of questions. In the past, you only had multiple choice questions, A, B, C, D. We now have multiple responses where you can choose A, B, and C of the question. And also you have matching type questions where you drag a text box to match something else on the other side. You also have hotspot where you're given a picture and you have to click at the right place on the diagram. There also have been 1 or 2 fill in the blank questions, but that is not a common method of testing on the PMP exam. The new exam is based on the PMI Talent Triangle, which has been in place for the last 7 or 8 years in PMI. And that PMI Talent Triangle was developed in order to understand the competencies that are necessary for a project manager. So these are the 3 areas of competency that a project manager needs. They need technical project management skills, for example, how to read a tracked Gantt chart. They also need strategic and business management skills to understand what is necessary in the market and how can this project that I'm busy leading, how can this project produce benefits that will assist in moving our organization towards that new reality. And the third leg is leadership. These are soft skills, how to encourage, how to set vision, how to lead people towards the objectives in your project. That's more on the soft skills line. Now, the 3 domains of the new exam align perfectly with these 3 legs of the PMI Talent Triangle. Domain 1 questions the area of people, and it constitutes 42% of the questions in the exam. Domain 2 is processes, and this has to do with all the 49 processes which are part of PMBOK edition 6 and before, and deals with things like the 10 knowledge areas and the 5 process groups. The 5 process groups being initiating the project, planning the project, executing, monitoring and controlling processes, and closing processes. And then the third leg of the triangle is the strategic and business management, and that relates to the business environment, which constitutes only 8% of the exam. So there's a fair amount of material that is no longer contained in the PMBOK guide at all. So you may very well and fairly then ask the question, well, where is that information contained? And I'm so glad you asked that question, because here's the answer. This list of 10 books is where the answers to the exam reside. Now I say answers, but guys, you do need to understand that in terms of the Bloomberg's taxonomy of testing, they're not testing facts at the bottom of the triangle, okay? They're really, in the PMP exam, are testing application of facts. So looking at understanding, deep understanding, and the ability to apply knowledge to a situation. Do not think that if you have the facts of all these 10 books in your head, that you will be able to go into the exam and pass first time, just hands down. It's much more than just knowledge of the facts. It's an ability to apply the knowledge to specific situations. And that's what is being tested in the exam. Of course, they're not looking for your best method of how to solve a problem. They have their own method, and that's the method that is being examined, the Project Management Institute way. What are the requirements to write the 2021 exam? You need to have a matric certificate plus 5 years of project management experience or a bachelor's degree. And I say here 4 year, but if it's an NQF 7 or higher, that's fine. Plus 3 years of project management. You also need a 35 hours of formal project management training, and the PMP exam preparation class, which Classic Seminars offers, will give that to you. So if you don't presently have 35 hours of formal project management training, don't worry. If you come on one of our classes, that will give you that background. Then there's an online application to the Project Management Institute, and we will assist you in putting that application together. It is a dog of a problem to put together. There's a lot of effort that's involved in it. You have to list out every project that you've worked on and validate these 5 years or 3 years worth of experience, putting out the names of the people that you worked with, their contact information, the name of the school or university that you went to, all the details of the people that were on your projects and references to those projects. One quarter or 25% of the people who apply for the exam will get audited. And we want to assist you to make sure that when you get audited, that you do not fail that audit. Once you get accepted, you need to pay your exam fee. The exam fee is $555. And then you have 12 months to write the exam. You have 3 opportunities of writing the exam. So if you fail the first time, there's still 2 times within that 1 year that you can go and write your exam a second and third time. The way that the booking system works is once you have paid your money, you're given a calendar, like an online calendar, and you can pick the date when you want to write. So long as the date that you want to write is more than 10 days from now, when you pay your money, you'll be able to go on the calendar and find an open spot 10 days from now, and you'll be able to book that place on the exam. I've already mentioned that there are Pearson VUE testing centers where you can write in person. If I had the choice, and if I was writing my PMP exam now, I would most certainly choose to write it in person. I would not choose to do it on a computer. And you asked the question, why not? Because it's still a little bit buggy and iffy, the whole process of writing online. And there are, probably 1 out of 5 or 6 people still who are having glitches or problems with that process on their computer. They are very lenient though. When problems do occur on your laptop and it's not your fault, it's their fault, they will allow you to rewrite or to do another exam. It's 230 minutes and it's 180 questions. So here is the difference between PMBOK edition 7 and PMBOK edition 6. So edition 6 is the table of contents is on the left-hand side. Edition 7, the table of contents is on the right-hand side. And essentially one of the big differences is that all the process-based information has now been removed out of the PMBOK. Edition 6 was 750 plus pages, a massive, massive document like that. Edition 7 is only 250 pages. However, the price has almost doubled of that book. So you could buy the 750 page book for, I don't know, about $60. The 250 page book now costs about $90 odd dollars or so. So you may well ask, well, if they stripped all of the information from edition 6 out of it, what happened to that information they stripped out? I'm so glad you asked the question. They put that into an online tool. So Standards Plus on PMI website now has all of the process information built into a tool that you can interrogate, you can query it and question it, you can search for things. What they have now put into the PMBOK is a different set of performance domains, and you can see them there on the right. So we have the team stakeholder lifecycle planning, navigating uncertainty and ambiguity, delivery, performance, and project work. So in that first section of the book, the standard for the project management, they introduce what is, what they call the value delivery system. So the standard for project management, this diagram is the wrong way around. So on the right there, where it says standard for project management, it should be at the top because it comes first in the book. And that is it's like a book within a book, if you will. That box called the standard for project management is actually ANSI approved, and it is a separate document within a document. So that standard contains in it a brilliant section called the value delivery system. And of that whole book within a book, I would say that area is possibly the most valuable and revolutionary, really, in terms of the previous PMBOK guide. And then the other segment, the 8 performance domains. So that is incredibly useful. What they do is they do a deep dive into each of those 8 topics, explaining how competencies and abilities within each of those areas will facilitate your project, regardless of whether your project is using a predictive life cycle or waterfall, where you've got one thing followed by the next phase until eventually you close out, or whether you're doing something like an agile type project or a mix of the two, an agile and a predictive kind of hybrid situation. So this entire guide is much more value and principle based than the old guide, which was process based. It also is applicable to every kind of project, whereas the old one was kind of like it was clipped on, where they kept on trying to clip on, how does this apply to Agile? This new version is much more generic. Right, what we're going to do in the next half hour is we're going to quickly blaze through the 49 processes, which comprise the largest section of the exam that you will be examined on. And we'll look at the 10 knowledge areas, the 5 process groups, and the 49 processes, just at a very, very high level. So I've already mentioned these 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closure. And these can be applied to a project or to a phase within a project. Here is the list of all the 49 processes. You'll notice in the columns we have the knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. And along the side or in the rows, we have the 5 process groups. So we'll talk first about integration. This is where everything is pulled together and where you get a coherence and a connecting between different types of things. If you're talking about initiating a project or phase, then when we're doing integration, we are developing the project charter at the outset of the project, or updating the charter if we're coming to the 2nd or 3rd phase of the project. What is the charter? The charter is the core document or the kernel document, the seed from which the rest of the project will grow. Inside it, you will have a clear description of the project in seed form. You'll have a very summarized version of the budget and some key milestone dates. You'll have identification of key stakeholders that are listed out in the project charter, as well as how you're going to approach running the project just at a very high level. The very next thing that you would do is you would then go into some planning, and the planning work that you would do, things like some budgeting, some working out of the schedule and so on. Gather all of that planning that you've done and combine it together to create a comprehensive project management plan. That's where the integration intersects with planning. So when you're integrating in the planning arena, you're taking your schedule plan you're taking your cost plan, you're taking your quality plan, and you're combining them into an overall comprehensive project management plan, which will guide the rest of your project going forward. When we're executing and integrating, we're directing and managing project work. What kind of things will we be doing here? Well, we will be making sure that people know when they have to do what jobs at the right time. So we'll be guiding and leading. We'll be conducting procurements, and we'll be managing stakeholder engagement. So we'll be organizing all of the work which is to the right of that falls in under the other knowledge areas. And then in terms of monitoring and controlling, in terms of integration, we'll be issuing change requests in order to get some corrective action where there's been things that are not working according to plan. And then we'll be issuing progress reports on the project. Right, on to the next knowledge area, which is scope. Scope basically effectively answers the question of what work is necessary in order to get this project done. And in scope planning, we'll be collecting requirements where we'll be going out to key stakeholders, and we'll be documenting eventually all of the requirements that need to be done on the project. We'll then, from this list of requirements, derive a scope. And this scope statement will be a crisp definition of the work that needs to be done on the project. And from the scope statement, we'll then move to the work breakdown structure, which is a hierarchical diagram. You'll have the name of the project at the top, and then perhaps the phases of the project underneath that. And then each of those phases broken out into major deliverables underneath it. Eventually, right at the bottom of the work breakdown structure, you will have a list of work packages, and those work packages typically will allow your team to operate for a period between 2 and 4 weeks at a time. Obviously, you can go down to more and more levels in the work breakdown structure, and how far you go depends on how large a project management team you have and how important it is to manage at that level of detail. Right, then a certain amount of work is performed, and the next set of processes that we come to is the processes under the monitoring and controlling. So in terms of scope and monitoring and controlling, we're going to be validating scope and controlling scope. What is validation of scope? It's where we get sign-off from the client to say that this particular piece of work that has been done matches the user acceptance criteria that were defined originally in the pre-project execution phase. So there are user acceptance criteria which a client has agreed to. We've produced deliverables. Now the client is coming to validate that this has been done up to the level that it was required originally. What is controlling scope? Controlling scope is checking to see that all the items on the WBS and only the items on the WBS have been done. If you find that your projects are continually adding more and more and more scope to the uncontrollably, and you don't have a good grip on that, there's a lot of scope creep. The reason why is because of your control scope process. Your control scope process is shot. You need to have a documented and highly regulated scope control process in order to stop scope creep. On to the next section, which is the schedule knowledge area. And this is where we make sure that the items are done at the correct time. And ultimately, what we're attempting to do is to make sure that the project is completed by a certain given point in time. In planning, when we're busy with the planning phase or planning process groups, we're going to be eventually producing a program or a schedule, okay, a baseline schedule, where we're going to have a list of all of the activities that need to be performed and when they need to be performed by. So there's a bunch of steps that are necessary in order to get to the final step in the planning, which is develop schedule. Those steps are define the activities, sequence them, estimate the durations, and finally pull it all together and develop the schedule. Then a whole bunch of things happen, different activities get done, and we come to monitoring and controlling. And when we monitor and control, what we're doing is we're asking the question, has this schedule that we developed in the plan, has it been adhered to? Did we work according to that plan? Yes or no? And as you can see from the schedule in front of you, for each activity, row, you have two different bars. You have a gray bar at the top and you have a blue bar below it. The gray bar is what you should have done. The blue bar is what you actually did. So you can see, for example, if you go to row 10, North Wing, that we should have completed this 2 weeks ago, but now we ended up running 2 weeks late, and it's 100% complete. It says 100% on the right of row 10. So we know it's completed, but we completed 2 weeks late. If we look at the next one, South Wing, we can see that South Wing started 2 weeks late, and we are now 50% of the way through, and it's late, that particular activity, South Wing. Right. The next knowledge area is the cost knowledge area, and basically this cost knowledge area answers the question of how much money is this project going to cost. And what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to create a plan which is going to meet with the contract requirements that originally have been, that we have agreed to. If we have a fixed cost contract with the buyer, then we're going to need to make sure that we work very tightly with our resources to bring this project in under that budget. And in order to do that, we have to prepare a cost estimate and put together a budget. We estimate the cost of each work package, and we want to put that out on an S-curve to create a cash flow of when this money is going to be spent. Once we have that, then we're going to have certain things that are going to be bought and sold, and then later we will come and check how well did we do. Did we hit that budget? Did we hit that cash flow? Or have there been overruns? And if there have been overruns, what is the corrective action that we need in order to bring things back in line again? On to the next knowledge area, which is the quality knowledge area. In planning, we're going to be putting together a quality management plan. And this is basically the document that guides quality. Quality answers the question of, is this fit for purpose? Is it according to the appropriate standards and criteria, measures of excellence that the client has requested? So all of that will then be baked into the quality management plan, which will then be used when we execute and even when we monitor and control. So when we come to managing quality, this is a process that occurs during execution, and it's basically an implementing of the quality management plan, particularly those areas that are around improving quality. So quality is one of those processes which is a loop within a loop. So we may have a quality control plan, but it's here in managed quality that we'll be improving our quality control plan. So finally, in monitoring and controlling, we have some quality control, and this is where the quality control plan is implemented, where we do inspections, we do tests, we do sampling, and the output of this is our verified deliverables, which are then ready to be validated for the scope. On to the next knowledge area, which is resources. In the resource knowledge area, we're asking the question, what resources do we need in order to get this job done? Not just what people or human resources we need, but what plant, what equipment, what consumables do we need in order to get this job done? And in the planning process group, we are putting together a resource management plan, which includes a staffing plan, which is going to then guide the rest of the operation of the project or the rest of the execution of the project going forwards. During the the executing phase of the resource area, we're going to be acquiring resources, getting them, obtaining the people, the equipment, the materials that the project needs, and then we'll be developing the project team. And that involves two different aspects. It involves team synergy, so developing teamwork and cohesiveness within the team, as well as applying the technical skills of the people to the site that we are busy on. So every site has got different rules, different ways in which you engage that site, perhaps COVID protocols, etc. So this would have a way of, and we would need to connect our team, their skills with this present site. And then managing the project team, particularly at the beginning of the deployment, we will find that there are conflicts in the team. There will be issues that arise, and we need to manage that. So we're maintaining the performance of the team. we're resolving any issues, and we're dealing with conflict. And finally, come to control resources for the resource area, where we're ensuring that the resources are deployed as we planned them to be deployed, and that includes the people, the equipment, and the materials. If they were not accurately or properly deployed, then we will issue a change request to update our resource management plan up in our planning process group for resources. And the resource plan would then be updated so that when we're busy acquiring resources the next time, it is done correctly. On to the next knowledge area, which is communications. And communications answers the question of what information needs to be communicated to which person and at what time and in what way. So when we're planning communication, the most essential and important part of the communications management plan is this matrix, the communications matrix, where we list out all the communications or the information that needs to be sent, who prepares it, who's it getting sent to, what format, what frequency, whose responsibility is it, and what is your escalation method. In other words, if your first method of communicating fails, what would the next option be that you would follow in order to get this piece of communication through? And that is particularly vital when it comes to the backbone communication within a project. You miss your backbone communication or the essential communication within a project, your whole project can fall in two. Right, onto the executing of communications. We manage communications. This is distributing the information, making sure that the information gets to the right people at the right time, and managing the flow. The flow of the information, enough information gets through to the right people in the right way. And then controlling the communication, we need to be monitoring the communication, looking at it and asking the question, is it working? The plan which we put out at when we're planning the communications management plan, are these communications being effective? How can we improve them? How can we make them better? And then we would issue change requests, which would then update our communications management plan so that we are using that new method or approach when we come to managing the communications the next time. On to the next knowledge area, risk management, which deals with the question of what items might happen to this project and cause us to miss our scheduled date for the project, or to miss the budget that we are aiming at reaching. It is anything which can derail or cause the project to not meet the other 5 constraints. So just quickly list out the other constraints: to miss scope, budget, cost, quality, or resources. So those other 5 are constraints which the risk area looks at to see, are these things being hit? In the very first planning set of processes with risk, we'll be producing what is called a risk register. And there you see an example on your screen of the table that is produced for the risk register. It basically lists out the kind of risk, a description of it, what would the outcome be if this risk occurred, the likelihood or probability of this risk occurring, what is the impact of the risk, the P times I, or the probability multiplied by the impact, multiply those 2 numbers together, and then assign it a word, either high, medium, or low. So if it was a very high number, like more towards 1, then it would be a high risk rating. If it was a lot less, then it would be a low. And then we need to have a management plan. How are we going to address this? And we would avoid this power outage by hiring a generator. That's an example of an avoid approach for a given risk. Right, and then when it comes to executing, we'll be implementing the risk response. So if we've said that we're going to buy a generator, this is where we would go ahead and buy that generator. And then when it comes to monitoring and controlling, we would analyze to see, have our risk responses that we've implemented, have they helped? So we bought the generator. Now, is this generator sufficient to avoid the problem of not having electricity, of the power outage? Well, if only half of the people are able to work because the generator is not strong enough, then our answer to that would be no, it hasn't been effective. We actually need another generator. So this is where we would control the risks, and we'd look to see whether the strategies that we put in place have been effective, whether any of the risks that we've listed out in the risk register, whether they've triggered, whether we've implemented responses, and whether those responses have been effective. We could also be identifying new risks here. Then we're on to the next knowledge area, which is procurement. The procurement area answers the question of what items or people outside of our team do we need to purchase in to our present project. And we would then need to put together the bid documents, send them out to all the vendors and allow them to fill those in so that we can adjudicate them and select a seller so that they can sell their services or their goods to us. So we put together a plan first and put together what we're going to procure, how we're going to procure it. And then when we come to conduct procurements, we get these quotes and tenders, we get the quotes filled out and sent back in, and we then do some negotiations with the relevant suppliers, and after negotiations, we shortlist and we select a given supplier and say that and award the contract. Once we've done that, then we get on to controlling the procurements, and controlling procurements are essentially managing that contract. So we're doing a bit of contract administration, managing any changes, and monitoring the performance and reporting on the performance of the procurements. Onto the final knowledge area, which is stakeholders. And this knowledge area answers the question of how do we make sure that every stakeholder is optimally deployed on this project. Now, not everyone is going to be leading in their area in the project. Some people are just going to be available to give their knowledge, to give their expertise at the right time and in the right way with a positive attitude. So we don't want people to be resistant to our project, that's for sure. But it's not that we're saying that we want everyone to be a leader on the project. We just want them to have a positive attitude and to be able to give what they need to give at the right point in the right way. And this knowledge area ensures that. And right at the beginning, during initiating, this is before we get to planning, and it's also while we are developing the project charter, we will identify stakeholders. What is identify stakeholders? We list out all the possible people who could have an impact on the project. We list out their contact information as well as their level of influence and impact and interest. Then when it comes to planning, we would plan out our stakeholder engagement. This would be where we list out how we're going to engage these people and what information they need in order to make them positive in their connection to this project. So sometimes people need to understand in detail how their contribution impacts the project and what the goals and ambitions of this project are and how they're going to provide value to the organization and perhaps to the community as a whole. And so these are important things to communicate in the right way to stakeholders in order to make sure that they are not negative and actually attempting to undermine our project. And then managing stakeholders, this is under executing. So when we're executing the stakeholder knowledge area, we will be managing the stakeholder engagement. Here we'll be implementing the plan, making sure that we are adopting these strategies of giving the information at the right time, the right way, and we'll be connecting with stakeholders. We'll be keeping another document called the issue log. And on the issue log, we'll be writing down issues which these people have. And these issues need to be addressed in order to keep people on board and keep people positive and engaged correctly with your project. And then finally, the monitoring and controlling. Is the stakeholder engagement working well? If it's not, how can we improve it? And these improvements then will obviously be made in the form of a change request, which will cause an adjustment to the planning of the stakeholder engagement or the stakeholder engagement plan, which will then feed back into the next phase or the next iteration that we perform various project activities on. So now we've finished all 48 of these processes. There's one more process that we need to get to. So we've done all these things, the product has been delivered, and we now need to close out our project or phase. And in this, the aim of the closed project or phase is to bring the project or phase to an orderly completion. And what we'll be doing here is we'll be making sure that the product is delivered, product or service is delivered, that the any handover occurs to the operations division, that they are fully able to operate the product or service. We'll make sure that any documentation around this is handed to them, perhaps an operations manual. We'll then also make sure that there's tight administrative closure. Every document that needs to be signed out. We'll get a certificate of completion. We want to make sure that all the legal documents are signed up and closed out. And if there's any snag list, make sure that those things are done before we get all those sign outs. And finally, bring our team also to a close, doing a post-mortem of the project and writing down lessons learned, etc. So this is the end of the 49 processes. We're now on to a very brief look at the Agile project management. We've got about another 6 or 7 slides to go. And this is one of the biggest changes in the 2021 PMP exam. In fact, half of the questions require Agile or hybrid approaches. So you guys are all probably familiar with the predictive life cycle. This is traditional planning, where you do one phase, and then you do the next phase, and then the next phase, and so on down. This is done typically on construction projects or engineering projects. All the planning is done up front. They're very well-defined projects. We know what to expect. Construction of a house or road or bridge or building. Here we have a picture of how that schedule would look. First two phases occur prior to the middle of May. So you have the first phase in January, February, then move on to the next one in March and April, finally ending in April of the following year. The other kind, Agile or adaptive, are project life cycles which are both iterative and incremental. What do we mean by iterative? Iterative meaning occurring again and again. The best example I can think of an iterative life cycle is something like a developing of a book. So the PMBOK guide itself is an example of an iterative project. So the first version of the PMBOK guide was worked through and developed in the years running up to 1996. When 1996 came, they released PMBOK version 1.0. Then after that, immediately they put together a second task force. And in 1997, they were already busy with the version 2.0 of the PMBOK guide. They worked in 97, 98, 99, and in the year 2000, the next version came out. And so that's an iterative improvement of an existing thing, where they take the first version and work on it and produce the next version of it. Incremental, on the other hand, is where you're able to produce different pieces of the project incrementally, little bit at a time, and release that piece by piece. And a good example of that is an app on a smartphone. For example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp, you didn't used to be able to do voice calls. It just used to be where you text message someone. And then all of a sudden you upgraded the WhatsApp, and now you can do voice call and you can do video call. And so they're adding little pieces every single time. That's a good example of iterative. So with iterative projects, the cost and time of each phase are fixed, but the scope is not fixed. So you'll bind and block down a 2 or 4 week period and get as much done as you can within that 2 to 4 week period. The customer is constantly involved. The team can respond rapidly to changes, and it's very good for projects which have lots of unknowns. That's why it's called Agile. So here's an example of that kind of schedule. So you have everything running simultaneously, but it happens in bursts. Excellent. So each iteration is time boxed. There's a fixed time. The time box is planned from at the start. We select items of work and we rank them in order of priority. Start with the highest priority items, see how much the team can complete. And then we have daily stand-up meetings. Each time box is called a sprint. The daily meetings are called a scrum. The team leader is called the Scrum Master. And this is basically how it works. So we have a product backlog where we have a list of things that needs to be done on our Agile project. And for those of you who are very used to a WBS or a scope statement or whatever, you can think of the product backlog as being like your scope statement or your WBS on the left-hand side. The sprint backlog is what we draw off that WBS and we allocate for the next 2 to 4 weeks. So that the little circle there of the 2 to 4 weeks, the things we're going to do during those 2 to 4 weeks are pulled off the product backlog onto the sprint backlog so that we know what we're trying to achieve during those 2 to 4 weeks. In that 2 to 4 week period, every day, we would have a stand-up meeting. And during that stand-up meeting, 3 questions would be asked. What have you done? what do you plan to do, and what is limiting you or stopping your progress in the now. It's very transparent, it's very in your face, and there's high degree of maturity and accountability within Agile projects. At the end of that, you have each sprint must produce something useful that can be demonstrated or give a demo of. And you then put that, you have a demo, the client is present, and you display the work that you've been doing over that 2 to 4 week period. You then have an internal sprint review where you analyze your processes, and you then come back to the beginning again and you do your next sprint. Whenever you see the word comprehensive in classic seminars, then you know that this is a method of training which carries behind it a 90-day guarantee. That is a 90-day first-time pass guarantee. In other words, if you fail the exam, after writing the exam, 90 days from having finished the PMP training, then classic seminars will pay for your rewrite. So there's multiple types of comprehensive training. We do in classroom, we do online. So we are still offering in-person classes. It is very limited, and in fact it's mainly only in Gauteng at the moment. But we do that from time to time, and certainly in 2022 we'll be offering more and more of that, hopefully, especially as more and more people get vaccinated. So yes, we do have multiple ways of doing this. Our programs are very intensive. We write tests every single morning. So if you come to class, you will have in the morning, you will need to have learnt and remembered and memorized that material from the previous day, being ready to write in the new day. Our afternoon class is the most, has the most opportunity for learning, because our sessions are split over a week period. So you have an afternoon session, a week where you can go back to work, and then another afternoon a week later. And so the exam or the test that you're going to be writing, you've got sort of 6 days in which you can study for it. It is a little bit more sane. The pace is not so rough. And we found that people who come on the afternoon class actually do perform slightly better than the people who come on the day, one day after each other. So comprehensive carries our 90-day first-time pass guarantee. We provide assistance with your registration at the Project Management Institute. We have a 2-day project management alignment course, which gets everyone on the same place. We have afternoon classes, weekday classes, modular and online. You will receive a comprehensive, thick lever arch file, thick like that, full of notes. I can actually show you what it looks like. It's a thick file like this. Thick, it's full of jam-packed with notes, about 500 pages worth of notes. And that document is a summary of the 10 books that I pushed out earlier, where there's weekly reading, weekly tests, there's a simulation exam at the end of the class, and your 90-day period starts from that date onwards, from the date that you've written your simulation exam going forward. There obviously are T's and C's for the 90-day guarantee, and it's based on your participation and engagement in the class. If you dial out and you miss half the classes, you're not present, and you don't write your simulation exam, and you don't do any of our online tests after that, then I'm afraid the 90-day guarantee is not available to you. That's part of the terms and conditions. We need participation, active participation. The idea is to promote people passing the exam, not people dialing back and then presuming that they're going to have the benefit of classic seminars paying for them for their rewrite. We have an online exam testing tool with multiple equivalent PMP exams, which you can take after the simulation exam. And we also then will offer personal assistance up to the time of writing the exam. So our joy is seeing you pass the PMP. And if you've registered for a comprehensive training, then we will be there until you write your PMP, even if that's only 18 months from now. Brilliant. Thanks so much, guys, for being part of this. Apologies that we ran 10 minutes over, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All the best, eh?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, Philip. Bye-bye.